Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we got a whole bunch of new Foundation spoilers, new combos, new synergies coming to Standard and older formats. Let's jump right into the first card, the Bloodthirsty Conqueror, which is a 5-mana 5/5, a Vampire Knight with Flying and Death Touch. Most importantly, this ability, whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. So what a amazing card to start off with an infinite combo. Um, so if you're not aware of these exquisite blood combos, this kind of does the same thing as that card. But we've got cards in standard. The Starscape Cleric, which says whenever you gain life, each opponent loses life. So you can see how this is an infinite combo, which this says whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. Whenever you gain that much life, each opponent loses one life, so those trigger each other infinitely over and over again. You just have to either gain a life or have an opponent lose a life to sort of start the combo. I really like it with the Starscape Cleric. You can also do it with the Enduring Tenacity as well, which is good because that can dodge removal, or if it does get removed, it can kind of come back as an enchantment and still have that effect. But I like the Starscape's Cleric in particular because it, well, one, it's cheaper. It costs 2 mana, which is always good to have your combo pieces cost just 2. But it's also a flying creature, so it can kind of start the combo pretty easily, potentially, by attacking for 2 the turn that you play the Bloodthirsty Conqueror, and then just go off from there. So more instant win combos for Mono Black. Mono Black just keeps getting tons of just instant win 2-card combos, so you could just play a deck with all of them or something like that. But yeah, this is, I think, pretty strong and potentially quite good of an instant win 2-card combo. Both of the cards, or you can even have redundancy, you could play all of these cards in the same deck, are decent on their own. And you could just play this in maybe, a life gain strategy as well with some lifelink or something like that. But definitely a card to watch for Standard, and I'm sure many people will be building this combo deck. Me potentially, we'll see. uh, in the coming weeks when Foundations is legal and Standard. All right, so next up we've got a new Chandra, 7-mana Chandra here, which is pretty powerful one, I think. Comes with 6 loyalty. It's legendary Planeswalker Chandra +2 ability is to add 3 mana, 3 red, and exile the top 3 cards, and then choose one. You can play the card, so it kind of gets you some mana back right away, which is pretty good for a really expensive card like this. So if you had a 3 mana play on top of your deck, you could play that right away, burn spell, creature, something like that. And going up to 8 loyalty is pretty good too, right away. So the +1 is to create a token that's a copy of a target creature you control, except as haste, and at the beginning of your end step, sacrifice it. So that's pretty good. It really depends on the creature that you have, but there's lots of good creatures to create token copies of, which can be pretty strong. And then its -4 is pretty good too here, to just deal 8 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers. So you can kind of, basically clear the board, potentially, um, really do a lot of damage to your opponent, split it up. The planeswalkers, you can attack them too. But it's sort of, this doesn't really have an ultimate. It's kind of like a mini ultimate, but you can play it for 7 mana, and then use it to kind of clear the board, and then if you do the +2 the next turn, kind of get another card advantage, then you can -4 again, if you need to clear the board again. So this is a really strong one. Definitely can kind of like take over a game if you get it out, especially if you can kind of cheat it into play. And there's lots of ways to kind of cheat it into play. One way is sort of the builder's talent, to use the last mode for 5 mana to cheat it into play. And there's other ways in Standard, such as Kona. You can kind of cheat it into play from your hand as well if Kona is tapped, and just activate it in your second main phase, which could be quite good to just do 8 to everything, or just start getting card advantage off of this. And then there's also an infinite combo here with Felidar Guardian. Felidar Guardian is it's banned in Pioneer, I believe, so it's probably be a modern combo. I don't know, it's a lot of mana, but it is an infinite combo. If you can kind of blink this over and over again, or make copies of it over and over again, this basically creates, if you don't know how this works, creates infinite Felidar Guardians with haste, because when it comes to play, you can blink the Chandra, and it comes back, and then you +1 again to create a copy of the Felidar Guardian, blinks the Chandra, and you kind of do that infinite times. So, there's certainly that 2-card infinite potential as well. Maybe in older formats, I don't know. It kind of seems expensive, but it's got that potential, so I thought I'd point it out. Yeah, let me know what you think about this Chandra. It's kind of a really interesting and powerful one. Um, so I think it's got some applications, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't quite see it being played fairly necessarily. I think you probably would want to cheat it in some way in standard with Kona or just reanimate it. Um, but yeah, definitely an interesting new Planeswalker design. Okay, next up we've got a new Nmissit, which also has some new infinite combos as well, or some near, close to infinite combos. So it's a 6 mana 5/5 legendary dragon wizard with flying, and it says you have no maximum hand size. And whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, you draw that many cards. So whenever a card says whenever blank blank blank, you do this something. There's some usually a potential for an infinite combo, and the infinite combo that works with him. And maybe there's other cards that do this, but is the other Niv Miss It, which says whenever you draw a card, it does 1 damage to a target. And then so whenever you do that much damage, you draw them many cards, and then you do the damage, you draw the cards, do the damage. So they kind of create an infinite loop with each other, which is kind of funny and ironic. I was trying to think, are there other cards that have that same line of text that whenever you draw a card, it does a damage? I'm not really sure, but maybe there are that I'm not thinking about. Um, but that's kind of cool. You can play double Niv Mizzet deck if you want. Pretty cool commander as well, combo there. And then in standard, we have this Invasion of Kaldheim. Not that card, but the backside of it. If you can manage to flip it, which is the Pyre of the World Tree, it says you can discard a land card to do 2 damage to any target. And then if you have Niv Mizzet out, you'll draw 2 cards. Now, hopefully, one of those 2 cards is a land. Say you built your deck, so you have like 30 lands, maybe a little more than half your deck is lands. You have a pretty good chance of kind of just keep going through your deck to keep doing two to your opponent and drawing that many cards and discarding all the lands. And then you also kind of like exiling cards from the top of your library if you want to play extra cards or things like that. But just by itself, that ability with the Nmissit could potentially just do not infinite, but a lot of damage. Just go through your entire deck and discard all your land cards. So something to think about. I mean, Invasion is not a great card on its own. It doesn't really see any play at all, but maybe there's some jank standard combo potential there. So that's cool. Okay, next up we've got the Mossborn Hydra. This card's pretty cool. I really like it. So it has a lot of interesting plus and counter synergies, landfall combos going on. So it's a 3 mana elemental Hydra. It's a 0/0 with trample. Oh, trample is quite important, I think, because it comes to play just with 1 +1/+1 counter, but landfall is to double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. So it gets out of hand really quickly. I think you need like 5 lands to make it a 32 power creature. But even if you just had 4 landfalls, I think it's like 16 power. Tell me if my math is not mathing, but you've got some interesting. So we got actually Halana and Elena coming back into standard, which is I was like, oh, just left, came back, which is kind of cool with this because anything that puts more counters on this is quite good, and potentially giving it haste later in the game if you play it after the Halana Elena could be quite good as well. But if you put more counters on it, then it makes it easier to double them, obviously. So then you kind of scale up faster. So you could play it in the +1/+1 counter synergy deck. There's other synergies. It's kind of really cool with Bristly Bill because it also has landfall, and its landfall ability is also to put counters on things. So you can target this, and it can also double counters with extra mana. So those cards seem very similar-ish and kind of could go in the same deck. We've got Fable Passage, another kind of fetch lands in standard. Fable Passage probably the best one just to get 2 landfall triggers right away. But yeah, definitely some potential. Aftermath Analyst works pretty well with this. You could go turn 2 Aftermath Analyst, mill some cards. Say you have a Fable Passage on turn 1 and Aftermath Analyst on turn 2, mill a couple lands, play this, and then the next turn play another Fable Passage, bring back 4 lands, and attack for 16 or so. That could be kind of sweet. So definitely ways to take advantage of this landfall ability to create a really big creature really quickly in standard. So definitely a cool one, and one I'm going to look at. It's also, I'll talk about later the reprints. Landwehr Elf is coming back, if you're not aware, in Foundation. So this is really nice on a turn 2 as well, to go turn 1 Landwehr Elf, turn 2 Mossor Hydra, and then all your future landfalls are going to double its counter. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get even more sort of counter synergies in the future, and that works really well with this. More landfall synergy. So I think this card's got some potential to kind of be a player in standard. We'll see. At least in some combo decks. Okay, we've got Aro the First Fang. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's a 3-mana legendary cat avatar. It says other cats you control get +1/+1, and then whenever it or another non-token cat you control enters, you create a 1/1 white cat creature token. So by itself, it triggers that ability, and you get a 1/1 cat creature token, which will be a 2/2 because it pumps up all the other ones. So if you kind of like blink this, then you kind of can do that. But really, you just want to play this in a cat deck because it itself pumps all the cats, and then the triggers when another non-token cat comes into play. So you want. I was just looking through standard. There's a ton of cats actually. Never really kind of looked at what kind of cats we got in standard, but Roxanne is a pretty sweet one. A Sunspine Lynx. There's the Neshoba Brawler. There's Enduring Curiosity as a cat. There's a lot of other ones. If you just do a search through, Skyfall for cat creatures in standard, there's actually quite a few that could maybe be a cat deck, and maybe I will make a cat deck. So we'll see what happens. But it's definitely a cool one to kind of just like, oh, let me look through all the old cards that are already there and see what kind of synergies we have there. Definitely a powerful lord. It comes into play and gives you 4 power right away and pumps everything already, and then continues to make tokens. So I think this is definitely really powerful. Again, Landwehr Elf could play this on turn 2 if you're playing in a green shell, which there are definitely green cats, as you can see. So maybe like a Nihilist with this, and you can play Landwehr Elves as well. So that could be decent. Yeah, but I think it's a decently powerful card, pretty fun as well. Yeah, let me know what your favorite cat is in the comments below. All right, we got the Twinflame Tyrant next, which is a 5-mana 3/5 dragon with flying, of course. And if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals double that damage instead. So definitely a powerful effect. So I was thinking, like, how do we use this? It's certainly a dragon. There is Sarkhan. I thought was pretty cool with this because you could play Sarkhan on 3, and then it reduces the cost of it, and then it would make it itself a copy of it on the next turn when you can play it. And having multiple copies of this in play is pretty sweet because I believe it doubles, so it's like does 4 times the damage. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like if you played Sarkhan on 3 and this on 4, you would swing for 3 in the air, but then the 3 would double to 6 and then double to 12. I think. So that's a pretty big hit. So that could be pretty cool. And speaking of copying and doubling it, Calamity would be pretty good too. I don't even know what the math is on that. If you had that on play and then you played Calamity and you saddled it up and created 2 more copies of it attacking, that's certainly a lethal attack, but I think it would be 8 times the damage. Tell me if I'm wrong on that one, but so then you would do a lot of damage, more than lethal, I believe. Yeah, my mind is not mathing tonight, but tell me in the comments below how much damage that is. It's lethal, I believe. And then what else? We got Filigree Silex. Like if you were able to do 10 damage, there's some spells that do like 10 damage in older formats. You can kind of double that just for instant kill. I made a Filigree Silex kind of instant kill. There's other cards that double damage in standard with that, but you could add that to that Filigree Silex deck. It's more of a fun one, but we'll see. Maybe they'll print other things that you want to that are easier to just do like 10 directly to your opponent. But yeah, there's probably some other combos with this guy. I feel like there's a lot of kind of interesting synergies with him that I might be missing. But let me know in the comments below what you think about it. Okay, let's see. We got Kaido, so another new Planeswalker here. There's 3 reprint Planeswalkers and 2 of them that are new. I mean, Kaido itself isn't new, but a new Kaito itself. So 3-mana Planeswalker, always interesting when they print 3-mana Planeswalkers because those are potentially quite powerful, especially with Landwehr Elves now. I keep saying everything costs 3 mana. I'm like, ooh, Landwehr Elves. So you can play it on turn 2. but it's very this one's pretty good, I think. It's so 3 mana, blue, Kaido, legendary, comes with 3 loyalty. It says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a loyalty counter on it. So interesting way to kind of increase the loyalty just naturally. You kind of want to, making you kind of think about kind of a go wide strategy here, potentially like lethal demolition decks or any decks that kind of make multiple token creatures, just kind of getting in there to increase its loyalty quickly, or the turn that you play it on turn 3, then you attack with a few things, and then increase its loyalty. You can kind of get to the ultimate pretty quickly here. +1 is to up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn, draw a card, and then discard a card. So very interesting ability. And it could work potentially as a discard outlet for like reanimation strategies, Rite of the Moth strategies, things like that. If you played Esper, to do that, as just kind of like a continuous draw discard outlet. You could like play this on turn 3, just make a ninja to block, trade off, protect itself, and then just kind of use it to loot every turn. That could be one use of it. And then I thought it would be kind of sweet with Unstoppable Slasher because it makes something can't be blocked, so that's pretty good as well. If you're playing like a blue-black slasher deck, combo deck, that can be kind of interesting just to kind of have that in there as a value to make something unblockable. Could be pretty good. So definitely an interesting one. So the -9 is that you can emblem whenever a player casts a spell, you create a blue ninja creature token. So that's pretty pretty sweet. Every spell any player casts for the rest of the game, even if this dies, you're getting a ninja creature token. So definitely a powerful ultimate there if you can get to it. And yeah, I feel like this could kind of spiral out of hand pretty quickly if you have a decent amount of creatures unplay token creatures, you can get to the ultimate pretty quickly. So definitely an interesting one to keep an eye on. It definitely has some power. Not like super broken, but I think it has a lot of different uses. So I can imagine it seeing play in different spots in standard. Okay, next up we've got Herald of Eternal Dawn, which is a 7 mana angel, flash and flying 6/6, and it says you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. So Platinum Angel is back, but kind of even better almost. That card was pretty cool. So if you don't know Platinum Angel, it kind of said the same thing, except it was a 4/4 flyer. It didn't have flash, and it was an artifact. Being an artifact, I suppose, could be good, could be bad, depending on how you're using it, but being a 6/6 is definitely a big upgrade, and having flash I think is a big upgrade as well. Um, the 6/6 because it ends the game quicker when you're attacking in the air. It also is harder to kill because having 6 toughness, especially burn spells, you know, could it's harder to kill. So this card, just playing it on its own, may beat some decks on its own that just can't remove it. For example, there's a lot of like mono red decks that just have pump spells that have no removal spells. So that could, just play this and there's no way they can ever win. It's pretty good. Um, so it's a pretty sweet reanimation target. Again, Ride of the Moth, kind of the go-to reanimation card right now. So that could just beat some decks. You could also play it with like Skrelv or other ways to protect it. I was trying to think. I don't think there's any ways in standards to just like permanently give it hexproof or indestructible. That was always the combo with Platinum Angel, was to try to like give it hexproof or indestructible, so then you can kind of protect it so you can't ever lose. But Skrelv is kind of a decent way to do that in standard, so it doesn't lose to any spot removal, but they have to kill the Skrelv first at least. And then Pact of Negation. Oh yeah, in older formats, that's kind of a classic combo with this. If you play that out, or you have it out, reanimate it, sneak it into play somehow, then you can use the Pact. You can't lose the game, so then any of the Pacts, but Pact of Negation is legal on Arena, so you can kind of use that as well in conjunction, so you don't have to worry about paying the upkeep cost, but it's just a free counter spell to protect it, which is pretty good. And then there's also they're replaying Mystical Teachings, which is interesting. I don't know how good that actually is. It's kind of a standard might just be way too fast for Mystical Teachings these days, but it is something you can actually search up with Mystical Teachings. And Mystical Teaching searches for instants or cards with flash, puts them in your hand. It's got flashback for 6. So if you wanted to, I don't know, if you're playing in Mystical Teachings, maybe control deck, something like that, you could have this as like a one-of for certain decks that just don't have any removal, and just have that as your bullet to just win the game, essentially. So definitely kind of interesting combos. Mystical Teaching is also an interesting card itself. Another tutor to kind of consider um, when you're considering other combos. But Herald of Eternal Dawn, I think, is I don't know, pretty strong. As just has the potential to win the game on its own. So, always got to look out for that, really, depending on the metagame. So let's move on to the 9 Lives Familiar. So they previewed this card a while ago, but I kind of wanted to bring it back here because it's such a cool card. It's a 3 mana 1/1. It's a cat, and it says whenever it enters with 8 revival counters on it, if you cast it. And then when it dies, if it had a revival counter on it, it returns to the battlefield with 1 fewer revival counter on it at the beginning of your end step. So it has 9 lives. It comes in with 8 additional lives. When it dies, it loses 1 life each time. It comes back. So it's pretty cool with sacrifice fodder. Anything that wants you to sacrifice things. Braids, I think, is pretty one of the better sacrifice outlets in standard. There's a few other ones that are pretty useful. So if you kind of have something you can just sacrifice every turn over and over again, 9 times, basically, before this runs out, that's pretty good. We can also just kind of like chump block and come back every turn, which is pretty good as well. And then it comes into play with 8 counters, and then 7, and then 6, and then 5. So I thought it would be kind of sweet with all will be 1, which does damage equal to the number of counters that a permanent comes into play with. Because this comes into play with 8 for only 3 mana, which is a lot. So if you had all be 1, you play this, do 8 to them, then when you sacrifice it, it comes back, and then you do 7 to them. Sacrifice again, do 6. That's 21 damage right there. So, or just block with it, and it seems pretty decent. Potentially, just having those two together could end the game pretty quickly if you have a sacrifice outlet or just blocking with it. So yeah, definitely an interesting card. One to keep an eye on again. Maybe there's other ways to kind of use its counters. Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, definitely a cool kitty. All right. Next up, we've got the Crystal Barricade, an interesting card here. 2 mana artifact creature wall, 0/4 defender. Haven't seen a lot of defenders these days, but it is a defender, and you have hexproof. So it's pretty good against like discard spells that target you, anything that target you, like burn spells. It also prevents all non-combat damage that we dealt to other creatures you control, so especially good against burn spells in that regard. If your opponent's trying to kill your stuff, they have to kill this first with burn. And it's kind of nice. So it's kind of like a sideboard card, maybe a metagame card, but it's kind of nice with your own red sweepers because it prevents the damage from those too. So if you had creatures out and you played Brotherhood, and it would deal 3 damage only to your opponent's creatures, or Pyroclasm as well. So that's kind of like some of the synergies I was thinking with this. Probably more maybe just a sideboard card, but if you maybe made a deck with a bunch of red sweepers, this would be kind of a nice include as well. All right, here is the Sear Slicer Goblin up next for a 2 mana Goblin Warrior, 2/1 with Raid at the beginning of your end step. If you attacked this turn, create a 1/1 red Goblin creature token. So it says if you attack this turn. So if you have a 1-drop and you play this on 2 and you attack with the 1-drop, it's going to trigger the Raid and you get another Goblin. So even if you just triggered Raid one time, it's a pretty good deal for 2 mana to get a 2/1 Goblin and a 1/1 Goblin, and every turn after that you've attacked, if it stays alive, you get more Goblins. So definitely pretty cool and a decent card to keep generating tokens every turn. So kind of like in token strategies with like Imidane's Recruiter, maybe you want this. It's not bad, because there's a lot of 1-drops in those kinds of decks that you just want to kind of get in a hit with on turn 1 or turn 2. So this could potentially be see play in some of the kind of red-white token decks, maybe. I'm not sure. There's like red-white-blue token decks as well that are pretty popular now. So I think that could find a home there. It's also a Goblin. There's not a lot of Goblin decks, but there actually are some Goblin synergies that maybe this is sort of reigniting in Standard. I love that they're kind of supporting these classic tribes again of Goblins and Elves and other things like that, to kind of bring Magic back to kind of its core principles of when it started. I started playing in Revise, so playing Goblin decks as well kind of brings me back to my nostalgia stuff. So it's good that they're kind of. I like that they're bringing back kind of Goblin tribes as well. I mean, goblins have obviously been good and bad and different throughout the history of Magic, but make me happy if it was good again. So we do have the Runvelt Horde Master in standard right now, which would be pretty good in this because it would pump up all your Goblin tokens, and then trigger to create more potential goblins off the top of your deck that you can cast. And there's some other goblins. If you just do a search for goblins in standard, there's some decent ones that are available right now, but haven't really gotten the support that they need to really push them over the edge to make them a playable deck. But we'll see. Maybe Foundations will be the set that really helps them. So that's that. Zul Ashur Lichlord is next, which is a 2-mana zombie warlock. So again, speaking of the zombie tribe, which is a classic kind of black creature tribe. It's got ward pay 2 life, which is kind of nice just to have something that makes them, pay a little bit of something to remove it. And then you can tap it to cast target zombie creature card from your graveyard this turn. Now, there's not as many good zombies in standard. I was kind of looking through it. It's kind of interesting with Ratadrabik. Probably pronounced that wrong, but Ratadrabik, yes. So that kind of gives all your zombies vigilance. There's some other things that kind of works well with zombies, but I thought this one was kind of interesting because it's also Zul Ashur is a legend. So if you died, then it would come back as a token copy of it. And if Ratadrabik dies, then you can bring it back with Zul Ashur. So the two of them kind of like make an undying army that they can never kind of die. They kind of bring each other back over and over again. So that could be kind of interesting. And also bring back any other zombies, of course. And then I thought it was kind of sweet with Tyvar too, because Tyvar works really well with kind of all of its abilities. The untap ability, you could cast multiple zombies to tap it again. It lets you activate it right away, and also it mills to kind of fill your graveyard with zombies and bring itself back as a 2-value creature, and then you could tap it to right away to bring back another zombie. So maybe there's some like green-black zombie deck that could emerge from this. Not really sure. But yeah, let me know in the comments below. There's probably maybe some other interesting combos with this in older formats. There's a lot of other zombie cards that are quite good. But yeah, let me know what you think about this one in the comments below. Okay, next up we've got the Vengeful Blood Witch, which is a 2-mana vampire warlock 1/1. And it says whenever this creature or another creature you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So kind of a classic Blood Artist effect. But it is a 1/1 itself, so it has some power that it can attack with and block potentially. But it's definitely a really good sacrifice payoff. We've got the Forsaken Miner right now in standard, which is one of the better things to sacrifice for value because you can pay 1 to bring it back when you commit a crime, and this thing commits a crime. So this is a pretty cool combo synergy here. And then if you add sort of a sacrifice payoff, the only kind of one that costs no mana, or then maybe there's a few that cost no mana, but the cheapest one is Bart. So this is kind of a nice setup here. If you had all 3 of these in play, they're all quite cheap. That you could basically pay 1 black to get a +1/+1 counter and drain your opponent for 1. It's not infinite because it's bound by the number of black mana you can pay. But if you did this every turn, that would be a pretty sweet kind of synergy combo here. So yeah, definitely interesting one. One to keep an eye on. Again, if there's other sort of sacrifice synergies or combos, this is definitely could be a key piece in that sort of shell. Okay, and now we've got some cards that look cool but don't seem that great to me. I didn't really want to make a slide for these because I couldn't really think of like any really good combos or synergies here. They're interesting cards. Tiny Bones is a 2-mana 1/3 skeleton rogue, so it could work, maybe with skeletons, with rogues, synergies. There's like all sorts of stuff, but it's just a 1/3. But really, you probably want to play this with like discard synergies. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you exile it and you put a stash counter on it, and then you can play those cards by spending any mana, and you can pay 4 mana to tap itself to have your opponent discard a card, only as a sorcery, which makes sense because you don't want to kind of like draw a step, you know, never let them draw another card. So a cool card, a fun card. I don't know if it's that great. I mean, you had to play it with other, like on its own, it's just like, not that great a 1/3. You have to play it with other discard, but it is, being able to steal your opponent's cards when you discard it is a powerful effect. It's not um, that bad. It's just like, I don't know, discard strategies are not that great, and I just couldn't think of anything that's like super cool, interesting combo with this besides play this with other discard, things. So that's basically what you would want to do with this. And then Archmage of Ruins. This card is interesting. So it's a 5 mana 3/6 giant wizard. It says instant and sorcery spells cost one less to cast, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. So I think this card is actually, it is quite powerful. It does cost 5 mana, which is really not what you want your cost reduction things to cost, because you want to typically play them early, so then your other spells can be reduced earlier in the game when you don't have as much mana. But if you already have 5 mana, I don't know, reducing your spells isn't nearly as good. But being able to draw a card every time you play an instant or sorcery is powerful, and reducing cards. But you kind of need to really kind of go off with this card. You need like ritual effects, which just aren't really in standards and maybe in older formats. But like, paying 5 mana for this effect, I just don't know if that's worth it. It could be. I may be underestimating it. But definitely the effects on it are very powerful. Being able to reduce mana and give you card advantage, those are kind of like the key things for a good combo to work. You want mana and cards to kind of go off, but just 5 mana for this, I'm just not sure if that's really going to be worth it. But yeah, let me know what you think about these guys in the comments below. So that is the new cards, the reprints, which there are a ton of, and really cool, interesting reprints are coming up. We got Harmless Offering, which is a 3 mana sorcery. Target opponent gains control of target permanent you control. So there's a classic combo that they're just giving us here, which is interesting. They're just saying, all right, you can also have Demonic Pact, which is a 4 mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you choose one that hasn't been chosen. This enchantment, it does 4 damage to target. Any target, you gain 4 life. Target opponent discards 2 cards, draw 2 cards, and then lose the game. So if the last mode that you haven't chosen is you use the first 3, and then the last one you haven't chosen is the game, you donate this to your opponent with Harmless Offering, then they have to choose that one, and you just win. So yeah, you can build this deck in Standard coming forward now when these cards release, which is pretty cool. I mean, that combo was always kind of a fun one to kind of do in older formats, potentially. But now you can play it in Standard, and I don't know if it's going to be good. I think it could be okay. And having Harmless Offering is always pretty cool because that card is definitely has combo potential typically. The other card I could think of in Standard is the Archfiend of Dross, which is decent. I mean, it's a decent card on its own, pretty good on its own. But there's ways of removing counters and then donating it, or just kind of waiting for the counters to go away and then donating it the turn it has its when it only has one counter left. So maybe you can do that in a deck. Maybe that's good. I don't really know if that would be that great. I mean, it doesn't really see play in any older formats where Harmless Offering is legal. But you could certainly try to get that combo off as well. Maybe play all of them in the same deck. Have some fun. Yeah, so interesting and very cool card. I love the art on Harmless Offering, the little snake tail and this little kitty. He's definitely harmless though. Don't worry about it. All right, next up we've got Ball Lightning. Ooh, one of my favorite cards. Yeah, definitely won a lot of games playing Mono Red back in the day with Ball Lightning. So very cool reprint. 3 mana. If you don't know what this is, it's Elemental Trample, Haste, 6/1. At the beginning of your end step, you sacrifice it. So yeah, how do we want to use this in Standard? Like, I don't even know if this is actually that good in Standard now. Like the red decks are 3 damage on or 6 damage on turn 3 is like meh. Killing people on turn 2 is where it's at in Standard. So I don't know. This card has kind of gotten power creep out potentially, but you could fling it. Why not? You can fling it with Burn Together, which is kind of sweet. Swing for 6, fling for 6. Not bad, but again, like there's like more powerful things you can be doing in red strategies potentially. But I don't know. It's kind of nice. And then I thought, another way that people kind of use this in other formats is just to kind of reanimate it. You can play it and attack and then dies, hit them for 6, goes to the graveyard, and then you can bring it back, like recommission. There's a bunch of cards in Standard that bring back something for cheap that costs 3 or less. It comes back with an additional +1/+1 counter, so you can hit them for 7 for the second time for only 2 mana. Or if you like manage to mill it on turn 1, you could go turn 2, recommission, hit you for 7. That could be kind of cool, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe those are kind of the ways of using it. That I was thinking about. Very very cool card, and maybe they'll print some more synergies with it. There's an elemental, which is interesting as well. But yeah, let me know what you think about Ball Lightning, if you think it might has the potential to Standard play. I think maybe, but it kind of just seems like power crept out at this point. Okay, next up we got the Elvish Archer. This card, this card is very powerful. Potentially, it does see play in like older elf strategies. When those are good, this is kind of one of the key or one of the important cards in the deck. Because it's a 3-mana 2/2. It says other elves you control get +1/+1 and have to add a green for each elf you control. Now, there's not amazing elves in Standard quite yet, but we do get Landware elves, like I keep saying. So that is definitely one of the better elves. Which can curve really nicely into this on turn 2, and then you can start generating a ton of mana from there. So maybe just having both of those is enough. They got the Tyvar, which nobody ever really played, but it does kind of give your elves Death Touch when they attack, and it works really well with creatures that generate a bunch of mana. When they tap, you put that many +1/+1 counters on them. So that's quite good with Elvish Archdruid. You can put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on it, and we also have Leaf Crown Visionary, which is pretty good too, as a payoff to spend all your mana to draw a bunch of cards and kind of elf ball out from there. So maybe there is an elf deck coming to Standard. We'll see. I'm not sure. We'll again have to kind of see. Maybe they're going to give us some more pretty sweet elves. There are quite a few different elves available. None of them are like super good, and there are some other synergies. There's like that Naya legendary wolf. Gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but that kind of like works with elves as well. So maybe there's something there in Standard. We'll see. Okay, next up we've got Solemn. This card's amazing. One of my classic favorite cards as well. So they're really kind of hitting on all cylinders in the nostalgia kind of mode here for older players. Gotta love it. So Solemn Simulacrum is a 4-mana 2/2. Not great start, but it does when it enters, you search your library for a basic land, put it on the play tapped, and then when it dies, draw a card. So card advantage, kind of a 3-for-1 here. You're getting a 2/2 body, you're getting a land, getting some ramp, getting some card draw. Could be work nicely with like artifact ramp strategies. You go turn 2 Fabrication Foundry. Kind of works good with Power Stones as well to kind of accelerate this card out on turn 3, and then accelerate out onto. You could get a 6-drop on turn 4 if you did that, such as the Nexus of Becoming and maybe some other things like that. So I think it maybe has a role in artifact ramp strategies, which are kind of decent in Standard. Has some decent payoffs, but this kind of fills a nice neutral and the 4-drop slot to kind of continue ramping up to your bigger artifact payoff. So yeah, that's where I could definitely see it. It could see play in a bunch of different homes, potentially other ramp strategies. I think is kind of one of the important aspects of it. But yeah, definitely glad to see it back. All right, we've got the Gilded Lotus next, which is a powerful artifact, a 5-mana artifact that taps for 3 mana of any one color. I was trying to think of like what would be some interesting combos with this. Vesuvian Duplimancer would be interesting because it says whenever you target an artifact, you create a token copy of it. So if you had Duplimancy on 4, this on 5, you played it and tapped it to add the mana to it to cast a spell that targeted it, that created a copy of it, then that one would come into play. You could tap that for mana to create another play another spell that targeted it and kind of go off from there, maybe kind of create a bunch of copies of it. The spell also drew cards that would kind of help you go off and snowball from there. Maybe there's some shenanigans you could do with that. Forensic Researcher could untap it, essentially tapping for 3 additional mana. So that could be kind of interesting as well. Yeah, not sure. Maybe there's some other things I'm missing with this card. It doesn't really see play in a lot of older formats. So maybe there's just, it's not quite good enough. But Definitely cool and interesting card, and I think it's got some shenanigans potential. So I'll keep an eye on it. All right, next up we've got the Lyra Dawnbringer, which is another blueprint, an angel, 5/5 for 5 mana, flying, first strike, lifelink. Other angels get +1/+1 lifelink. So there are quite a few other angels in standard. A few of them that are pretty good are the Steel Seraph. We got the Errant and Giada, which can be nice to find all your kind of other angels. But pumping them up and giving them lifelink could be quite good. And Sigarda also helps you find other angels from the top of your library. So there could be some sort of angel deck that uses Lyra in standard. Maybe, maybe not. Not sure if that would be good enough. Might be a little too clunky or slow, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Again, with as they're supporting all these kind of like old classic tribes in standard. So Lyra is definitely kind of a nice payoff for the angel tribe. All right, so next up we've got Darksteel classes and Progenitus. I did not expect these to get reprinted, but they are. If you don't know what these are, Darksteel classes is an 11/11 trample indestructible, cost 11, and it gets shuffled back into your deck if you put it into your graveyard. Progenitus is 2 of each color for 10/10. Protection from everything also gets shuffled back, so you can't reanimate these really. So you had to find other ways to kind of sneak them into play. And there are some in I mean, there's quite a few ways to sneak things into play in standard. You got the Smuggler Surprise, put these into play. Maybe Chaotic Transformation, Manifest Dread, and Blink. Kona again. You kind of put these into play. I don't know if these are like better than the other options. Like Atraxa might just be still the best one, even though it only costs 7. It's like better than these 11 mana creatures that used to be kind of. I remember when these cards were first printed, they were like, "Ooh, like how can you ever lose when you have these in the battlefield?" But yeah, you can certainly lose now when you have these on the battlefield, just given how powerful Standard is and how um, power creep has kind of adjusted the game. But interesting cards, and kind of to see like, I don't even want to sneak this into play. I play this if I got this into play on turn 4 with a Kona, like I don't even know. I probably wouldn't win the game. So yeah, definitely interesting. But we'll keep an eye on them for sure for combos. For things that can kind of sneak to things, maybe I don't know, like sneak attack effects, things like that, to put them into play. Tapped and attacking, things like that. Um, but yeah, maybe Manifest Dread is like the best because you can get them on turn 3. Not too bad; it can win the game on its own. But yeah, just interesting stuff. I mean, Darksteel Colossus is interesting in particular because it's an artifact, so maybe there's some artifacts stuff you can do that with that. But yeah, let me know in the comments below if there's other interesting ways to kind of cheat these guys into play. Okay, we got Pyromancer Goggles next up, which is a 5-mana legendary artifact. Taps for red, and it's spent to cast a red instant sorcery. You can copy it, choose new targets. So an interesting one. This might just be, this again was a really cool card back in the day. It might just be too expensive now, but it's kind of sweet with 1 mana spells because you can use it right away to kind of copy like shocks, do 4 damage or 2 damage split up. So really good with kind of burn spells, obviously, to copy those over and over. You all can also use it like as a ramp to go big. The card I thought of was like Hit the Motherload would be pretty sweet to copy, to discover 10 twice and then create a ton of treasure tokens potentially. So a bunch of free spells, a bunch of treasure tokens to cast things or use them in other ways. So maybe there's some combos there. Maybe there's some other card I'm not remembering in standard that would be kind of sweet to copy. That's red, but it is kind of restrictive. It has to be a red instant or sorcery. But yeah, there's not necessarily like a great Fireball variant right now too. But maybe they will reprint Fireball. We'll see. But yeah, so that would be good if they have that as well. Okay, next up we've got Omniscience. This one is again previewed a while back. Very classic, 10 mana blue enchantment comes into play, and everything is free. You're not paying mana cost for anything else. There's a lot of ways to cheat this in, because you can just put this in your graveyard. You don't have to worry about it being shuffled back or anything like that. So like Repair and Recharge, you can put it into play directly, or Borealis Awakening, probably like the cheapest way to reanimate it. Doesn't make it a 1/1, but then maybe you can just kind of go off and win that same turn, so it doesn't really matter. If you have like a Trax in play, you just put that directly into play, and then that gives you 10 cards, and you can play all those for free. And then Kona again is another pretty easy way. Maybe Manifest Dread again. to if you put this underneath the Manifest Red or put it face down and you blink it, it comes back into play as an Omniscience. So you can get that pretty early in the game. If you got lucky with your Manifest Dread, of course. So yeah, maybe these are ways to cheat it in, and maybe it's worth it. I'm not really sure if this will be worth it. I think it probably will be. Definitely, certainly a combo card that I'm have on my radar for sure. I'm trying to think of like really good ways. Like Atrax is probably the best way to just kind of have both those in your deck. Works really well with just any card draw. Um, Tutor effects are quite good with it as well. I think there are some cards in Standard that let you tutor cards outside of your deck. So those are always kind of interesting with Omniscience. Those are kind of like the ways that you kind of can set up instant win combo with Omniscience. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think about Omniscience. What's the instant win combo in Standard? I'm not really sure exactly what it is. If there's like one card that would just instantly win you the game with Omniscience, but maybe there is. So yeah, let me know what that is. And okay, a few more left. Itasuka Second Right. This card is really cool. It's definitely a fun kind of meme card. 4 mana for an instant. If target player has exactly 10 life, does 10 damage to that player. So instant kill. They have exactly 10 life. It's hard to use. Historically, it's not been a very good card at all, but definitely a fun one to think about. There actually is like a lot of pinging creatures in Standard, so maybe I'm probably going to try this in a janky deck. We got the Hired Claw, which pings for 1, the Vine Lasher that pings, the Needlehead that pings, and the Gev that can kind of ping as well with all these different lizards. But kind of the key for this card is that you want to be able to kind of control your opponent's library. I mean, not library, life total, 1 damage at a time, and if you can do that with ping effects, then it's quite good. So because you want to make sure you don't get them to 9 life, you want to be exactly at 10. So if you kind of do enough and then control their life total to get to 10, and then you cast this even like mid combat with Hired Claw, that they're 11, you attack, get them exactly to 10, and then you cast that and win the game. So I'm going to try it, I'm sure. Definitely a fun and interesting card. Yeah, let me know in the comments with other ways to use this. Maybe there's other things I'm not thinking about that could be a nice combo with it. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking about with that one. Okay, yes, I've talked about this a million times. It's Landware Elves. Anytime you see a 3-drop now, you got to think about Landware Elves. Landware Elves is probably the best card in the set thus far previewed. Green isn't the best color in Standard right now, so it really needed a boost. And Landware Elves definitely is a really good card. It's just 1 mana, 1/1 adds another color, so definitely just like makes your curve go up. The one thing going against Landware Elves is there's so many kind of cheap creatures in Standard. There's so much removal right now for cheap creatures already in Standard that really it's kind of a hostile environment for Landware Elves to kind of go crazy. So it might just like die all the time, but you gotta believe. Unstoppable Slasher on turn 2 would be pretty cool. Screaming Nemesis on turn 2, Glissa on turn 2. Impending the Overlord, the Haunt Wards. There's tons of other cards. What are you most excited to play on turn 2 with Landware Elves? I've mentioned quite a few other ones in this video already. But yeah, definitely an impactful card at the very least in Standard, and a very powerful card. So something to always think about when you're thinking about 3-drops and 4-drops, and kind of just ramping up your curve, jumping it up by 1, which is very, very powerful effect. So yeah, definitely looking forward to playing with some Landware Elves. And the other note with Landware Elves I was thinking about too is there's actually really good fast lands in Standard too, which matter quite a bit to have like green, white, green, red fast lands, things like that. So green, black fast lands that you can cast Landware Elves on turn 1, but also use them on turn 2 to cast a different card of a different color. So that's definitely a plus for Landware Elves. Okay, next up we've got some of the reprint Planeswalkers, Ajani, which is a 3 mana 4 loyalty. +1 to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. -3, give a creature flying double strike. -8, create a bunch of cat creature tokens equal to your life total. This is a fairly powerful Planeswalker, I would say. It saw some play back in the day. It triggers Valiant, which is kind of cool and interesting. So it could be maybe in that sort of red, white sort of Valiant kind of strategy. Could go in there, maybe. And then, give your creature flying a double strike once it gets pumped up. Could be decent. Nice with Unstoppable Slasher. Give it flying and double strike. You can do like 17 damage, I think, with that. And then, just counter strategies as well, getting +1/+1 counters on anything. Innkeeper's Talent, other +1/+1 counter strategies would be potentially go well in to kind of pump up your guys, use those synergies, and then use it as a finisher to give your big guy double strike. Innkeeper's Talent, very interesting with all these planeswalkers because of its last mode to double up the counters on anything that comes into play. So you could ultimate this right away with Innkeeper's Talent if it's leveled up to level 3. So something to consider, as well as with these other new ones, Vivian Reed and Liliana, Dreadhorde General. Now these cards, gosh, I want these to be good, but I don't think they're actually that great anymore. They were decent when they saw playing Standard before, from what I recall. But I just, gosh, Standard is just so, I don't know, fast now. I'm just not quite sure these are that good. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because these cards are really, really cool. But just their abilities are not great. But I do think they have maybe some potential with Innkeeper's Talent decks when you're just wanting to ultimate Planeswalkers, because they do ultimate right away with the Innkeeper's Talent. So maybe there is that kind of strategy, which would be decent. Who knows? At least it would be certainly a lot of fun. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think about these new Planeswalkers, all the new reprints. Foundations is looking really, really cool. Very nostalgic, but also some really interesting, cool new cards as well. What are you most excited to build? New combos? Anything I missed? I'd love to hear your ideas about any cool combos that I'm not thinking about. Always love the ideas and appreciate the feedback. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I will be back with probably some more spoilers when they get released. I think there's all this coming week. There's going to be a bunch of spoilers for Foundation, so I'll try to cover them and any combos, synergies that I can think of as well. But yeah, really appreciate you watching. Yeah, hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.